as you know, my name is Brenda. And before I continue, I should say I'm slightly dyslexic. I have a speech impediment. It's very important to say this following two professors. So I'm most likely to switch around words. So I'm concentrated now, so I can say with confidence that I'm an alumna of Warwick University. I was here in the 80s. But I could, in free flow, without any wine, could say alumni, aluminium, etc. So I need you to know this up front. Now, I'm very, very pleased to be here for a couple of reasons. One, because I did go to Warwick University. Two, I'm following two universities. I did my first degree at UCL, and I did my master's here, so that's another reason I'm very pleased to be here. And thirdly, a friend introduced me to TEDTalks about 2.5 years ago. So I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, but very happy to be here among you. And actually, when I did send my talk, I did say it was tackling education disadvantage using insider information from bankers and lawyers. And I'll go on to tell you why that is. Now, I was born, a bit of background about me, I was born in the UK with Barbadian parents. And in Barbados, education is very important because people know that education is the route for a better life. And my mother was, and still is, fanatical about education. She was one of 11 children. She was a middle child. And my granddad had land. So my aunt Doris, who died 2 years ago, being the eldest, hardly had any schooling. Because, you had to help out with the children, and you had to help on the land. Very important. So my mother, being in the middle, she had periodic schooling. So as a result, she was fanatical. When I was 10, we went to Barbados. I'll give an example. If we were ill, if you had a dental appointment, we couldn't miss school. And I remember once going to the dentist, I had a tooth out, and you know how they put the cotton in, it's bleeding, and the dentist said to my mum, well, she should go home and rest. And my mother said, go home and rest? No, she cannot miss school. Just give her a couple more, she'll stick them in once that one gets filled up. And that, honestly, that was my mother. And I don't know if you all know hawkers, or those women who sell food in the street. Because we have, in Barbados, it's the 11 plus. And if their child got into a good school, they sold you this information. They told you this information. Oh, they don't know you. Oh, I should let you know, my son, he got into Commonwealth. Because they knew it was the route to a better life. So at 18, I go to UCL. And the first thing that surprises me is how few black students from Britain there are at university. Yes, you have your overseas students, either from African countries or from Caribbean countries, but there are very few black British students. This is in the 80s. And looking in the audience, I see very few here in the audience, but that may be for other reasons, but there were very few at UCL and at Warwick University. So this was a bit of a surprise. And so as you go on, when Labour came in 97 and wanted education, 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 they brought in league tables. I'm sure you all know this. At the bottom of the league tables are people from African and Caribbean descent, especially if you're from Caribbean descent. So that was a mismatch from my experience. But I, went to work, etc., following on my path. And then I got involved with this organization and thought of the idea of having diversity career fairs. I thought I'll bring black graduates to the private sector so they could be recruited into jobs. And we did this for 4 years. I remember the first career fair, diversity career fair. When you do that first event, you're nerve-wracking. You think no one's going to turn up. It was in March '98. I remember it was a sunny day. We had hired Business Design Center in Islington. 3,500 people turned up to this career fair. It caused health and safety problems. They had to close the building down. People couldn't come in till you go out. And so, firms kept coming back. Graduates kept coming. And people said, oh, it's such a success. But they couldn't understand why I stopped it 4 years on. The reason why I stopped it is because I didn't get a single graduate into a graduate recruitment job in the private sector. And so when I went to speak to a lot of these graduate recruitment people, I said, well, why are you not recruiting these black students? And they were very direct, and I'm very grateful for them for their directness. They go to the wrong universities. They got the wrong A-levels, and the grades, quite frankly, at A-level are not good enough. They do not meet the criteria to come into our workplaces. And so when you do a bit of research, you realize that a lot of black students who are aspirational, especially go to a state school in a disadvantaged area, and they somehow got it that they know that education is the route to a better life, don't always do their research on what it is they need to do. So I'll give an example. I go to talks at school when I recruit students. I went into a school once, and this little fellow was sitting there, and I said, what do you want to do? Because the amazing thing is they always have an idea, the area they want to go into or what they're interested in. And this boy said to me, he's year 9, he's going to start his GCSEs in September. I want to be a scientific researcher. I went, that is fantastic. Have you thought about what A-levels you're going to do? He said, yes. I'm going to do media studies. I'm going to do business studies. And then I quite like drama, etc. And I said to him, so you're going to do this, but you want to be a scientific researcher. Don't you need some sort of science? Why are you choosing these subjects? And he's choosing these subjects, of course, because that's what his friends do. Now, back to my mother. When I was doing O-levels, I'm of that age, not GCSEs like you all did, I was an okay student, so I was doing 8 O-levels, doing the subjects, and I thought that I could do typing, because I thought it would be useful. You know, when you're a student, you can get some typing work, etc. My mother, she saw these, I didn't bring you up, I didn't push you into education for you to end up in a typing pool, to the school, to the head teacher, and she got that subject changed. I did English literature instead of typing. And when you think now, you know, how much, you know, computers, etc., and keyboards are in our life. I mean, we didn't know then, but how useful that would be. But just to show, she was fanatical because she saw us all proceeding and going to university. And so, you know, so she had this route path. And when I went to school in Barbados, people who wanted to do medicine, the University of West Indies have a number of campuses on different islands, and the medical facility is in Jamaica. And all those who did medicine knew to get in to Mona, which was pretty difficult as it is, very competitive, you had to do physics, chemistry, and maths. You would have thought biology would be in there, but no, physics, chemistry, and maths. Those were the 3 subjects. You just knew it. And so when I go into state schools, I'm amazed what they do not know. So having failed at the graduate recruitment fair, I decided I was going to go from age 22 back to age 13 and create a program for state school pupils. I got some funding from the European Social Fund and the Learning Skill Council. So when I went back to these big firms, the investment banks, the corporate law firms, I said, look, I'm doing this, and you know, the look of worry in their face, I said, but don't worry, you don't have to pay, I got the funding. What I want are your staff who will volunteer to mentor state school students of African and Caribbean descent and help them make informed decisions through their career path. So I really wanted to become my mother, you see. And so we set up a 4-year program. We take the students to Oxford or Cambridge for a week-long residential. It's about aspiration. And you won't know this, but if you live in Elephant and Castle, you do everything in Elephant and Castle. You go to school in Elephant and Castle, you shop in Elephant and Castle, you meet your friends in Elephant and Castle. You don't even get the number 12 bus to see the Big Ben. That is your area. You don't get out. So we get them on a coach, we take them to Oxford and Cambridge for that week-long residential, and we get them ready to learn. So when they go back into school in September, their focus. Because we get two sets of students. The ones I talked about, those ones who do have aspiration, but don't have that roadmap. But we get the other one. This is the one the schools and teachers said that we need to focus on as well. We get those students who the school said could do well academically, but they're underachieving. And probably not surprising, because if you live in a family who are struggling financially, it's usually because of poverty, and it's two types of family. Those who are on benefits, you expect them to be struggling, but those who are in work, you know, that low skill, long hours, low paid jobs. And so you see people struggling, and some of these students see having a job is not that great because, you know, you're still struggling to get money. And we all know about the role models that they see, who has the flashy car, the nice jewelry, the pretty girl, etc. So we get them out, and we start by taking them from Oxford and Cambridge. The other thing we do is that we match them with mentors in the city, and they come into the city once or twice a month, and they meet their mentor. And you'll be surprised that these bankers, if they're not reassigned to New York or Hong Kong, etc., lawyers, are on average with these students for 2 years, some for 4 years. And we have had phenomenal success. We are getting students, black students, from state schools in disadvantaged areas, from parents who haven't gone on to further and higher education, into jobs. The reason why? One, the bankers and lawyers have gone on to further and higher education. So one, we want their knowledge, they want their information. But the second key thing are their networks. Networks are so important. And I know you in this room know this. So if I have a child who says he wants to, tells his mentor, I want to do architecture, this is how a banker thinks. Oh, you want to do architecture? What are the top universities in this country for doing architecture? Because my bankers are international. What are the top ones? So they start doing research together. Architecture, Bath and Sheffield, according to the Times at the moment. Okay, so what do you need to get into Bath or Sheffield to do architecture? And so, you know, you start a plan working backwards. You start with what types of A-levels you need to do, what grades, what UCAS scores you need. And then, you know, with GCSE, what grades you need to get to start going into colleges to do the A-levels. This is very important information, so that's the first thing. The second thing where they become very useful is that they are likely to have a friend or family member who is an architect, who they can have at a mentoring session to speak to the child, or better yet, what some of them do, arrange for them to have a couple of days to a couple of weeks in an architectural firm. And for a young student, girl or boy, that is quite aspirational. So, I know a lot of programs have a very high turnout rate. For our 4-year program, we have an over 80% retention rate over the 4 years. For GCSEs, A-levels going into university, we have an over 70% turnover rate in doing that as well. But some of my issues sometimes is getting over the perceptions or the stereotypes that people have of young black teenagers going, when you talk about educational excellence in this country, unfortunately, because interestingly in Barbados, there's no private school at secondary school. I know most people will find that very surprising, but it's all state schools at secondary level. Whereas here, it's, you know, to have that here, you know, it's just such a disconnect. And I'll give you an example. I won't call names, but I had a employers association contact me a few weeks ago and say, oh, someone told me what you were doing, and we're very, very keen to get involved. And I said, good, because we could refer some of our mentors, our members to you who can have mentors. And I thought, fantastic. Anyway, they sent this company along, and we had a meeting, and this fellow honestly said to me, I saw the website, and I was a bit puzzled, but I thought, okay, you have to think laterally, you have to be open-minded, let's hear what this guy has to say. But this firm runs prisons and prison training for prisoners, for those who are about to be released. And so this association sent this person along because they thought ex-prisoners who recently released from prison will be great mentors for my students. So I told him, hold on a minute, let me just go upstairs to back to my office, let me get a poster, because I've got all the logos of all our sponsors, from the JP Morgans to the Citi, Clifford Chance, Baker McKenzie, Reed Elsevier, and I floored it on the table. I said, this is where I get my mentors from. I'm not sure why they sent you. I'm not even sure if someone who has a prison record is allowed to mentor on a one-on-one, someone under the age of 18, because I've got to get all of my mentors CRB checked. So one of the key issues that I have to deal with are real perceptions. And also perceptions of my young people. One of the reasons I get them to go into the firms is that a lot of them and their parents, and we have programs for the parents as well, because we really have to build the parents' confidence as well, is for them to get used to going into those nice, flashy buildings to see their mentors, getting comfortable with doing that, so that they know that it is someplace for them if they meet the criteria and take the right decisions, which I know a lot of you would have made along towards their career goals. And we've had some wonderful examples. They learned some great stuff. Like when you go to the reception desk, you need the first and last name of your mentor. Because before, I tell you, some of the things I had, the first set of students I had them going to JP Morgan, and you've got a bunch of black teenagers going in, oh, I'm here to see Bob, or I'm here to see Mary, etc. And it caused quite a fallout, because of course, thinking about the security, again the stereotypes, they thought they were, come off the street to cause problems, and they were asked to leave the building. And I had a lot of fallout from the parents, as well as having to sort things out with the corporate social responsibility people. I think that's the end of my talk. I hope I make it clear why I use people from the city. And thank you very much for listening. I see I got 10 seconds, so I'll stop here to wait for the bell to ring and answer any questions that you want. Thank you very much.